200 years ago, 2,000 years ago. This isn't going to work.
She's picking up a massive object in this video.
Ships that might be cloaked, I can sense them in my vicinity. So I guess I'm just very tuned in.
Vulcan head honcho walks out, ear reveal.
Yeah.
The crowd goes, oh my God. Was to protect the secrets from the Air Force that were not out there in the public. So
welcome back to Last Night on UFO Twitter. Wow. I finally have my energy back. Since last week, friend of mine, Jason Gilmet, who also runs UAP Studies podcast, we traveled from Canada to the November 13th congressional hearings, and we met with some really interesting people. We heard some interesting testimony that has now been recorded to congressional record. And we have, had not just one hearings at this point, we've had two. Yesterday, there was the AARO, All Domain Anonymous Resolution organization. What is it again? AARO stand for, but their congressional hearing led by Senator Gillibrand happened, and the only person to testify there was Dr. Jon T. Kosloski, who's the new director of AARO. So it was kind of like an AARO psyop, I guess. We kind of expected AARO to dunk on any credible UAP footage or UFO existence or non-human intelligence theories that are out there. It wasn't surprising. It happened. Everybody that's part of the UFO community that's not like a demon hunter, we expected that, right? So here we are. I'm going to bring in the Twitter spaces, the tweets, the Twitter people. Hello, everybody. I'd like to start up the space by hearing from Pastor Dale, my friend from Observer of Anomalous Objects, who usually gives us some kind of positive message to start the space off on. Go for it, Dale.
I appreciate it, Darcy. And to everyone on X and everyone watching the radio program last night on UFO Twitter, I just want to welcome you and tell you how much I know Darcy and I appreciate you being here. I like to have a saying, a catchphrase to help people remember what I'm saying. And so I try to come up with one every week. And this week it's going to be, the sun will rise again. The sun will rise again. It's important to remember that when things are going sideways in your life, it's important to remember that the sun will rise again. Last Friday, I did a podcast with Matt Laszlo, and we were covering the very topic that we're covering here. In fact, I'm going to have another podcast with him tomorrow to cover the same thing. The same night, it was Friday night, I was sharing that podcast on my X account through DMs to friends of mine when all of a sudden I got locked out of my account. And it really freaked me out. And the thing that freaked me out is the fact that not only did they lock me out, but the same night, a couple of Matt's accounts were locked. And so it was just really weird. Here I am sharing the podcast. I get locked out. Matt gets locked out. And I think you'd have to call that a little suspicious. One of the reasons that it alarmed me so much was because a friend of mine named Gary got locked out like that, very similar circumstances, and he never got his account back. And so I was freaking out, and I was using my second account. It's a backup account I have. I literally started that account before my primary one I have now. and I had a whopping 5 followers on it. And so in desperation, I started to get word out to let people know what had happened to me. Now, let me say this. This was a big deal to me. I had almost 4,000 followers, and it's taken me about 4 years to build that following. And one of the reasons it was very important, not just losing the following, but that would have crippled my podcast, because right now the only way I have of advertising my podcast is on X to be able to promote it. Now, I get it. It wasn't life or death, but it was important to me. Now, fortunately, Saturday night, right before I went to bed, they went ahead and unlocked it. They didn't tell me why. Some of the messages I got said suspicious activity, but anyway, that's all I got. It's just, they gave it back to me. You know, we've all had days like mine, days where it just kind of feels like nothing's going right. But remember that the sun will rise again. I know a lot of you are probably upset over yesterday's hearing. It seems like nothing really changed. In fact, I think it was just nothing more than damage control. When Kosloski got out there and he said there is no evidence of extraterrestrial life, I think that pretty well set the tone for the rest of the hearing. You know, it might as well have been Kirkpatrick come out, because that was a company line. And if, you know, this is my opinion, if that's the company line, then Kosloski is, like it or not, he's a company man. Now, to be honest with you, I don't feel like it was a setback, because it was exactly what I expected. I said I was cautiously pessimistic. I said that before, so you can go back and find my post and say that's exactly what I was expecting. Now, if you are still upset and you feel like it was a setback, just remember that the sun will rise again. Now, the point I want to make is things are never as bad as they appear. You know, there's an old saying, making a mountain out of a molehill. That's when you have something that's kind of small and you kind of start thinking on it, and pretty soon it's not small anymore, it's big. It's making a mountain out of a molehill. And so let me just encourage you, don't make mountains out of molehills. And always remember, the sun will rise again.
That's true, Dale. Thank you very much. That was inspirational and based. Yeah, I panic probably once or twice a day. And every time I panic, you know, it probably is a bit of a impending doom type of panic in my mind, but it's things like you just said that remind us it's not the end of the world. Just breathe, keep your head on. You're going to get through it. There's always some light at the end of the tunnel. If you're going towards the light, there will be some. So let's talk about the hearings. I've got a bunch of speakers up here. Please mute if you're not directly going to talk straight away. I wanted to hear from Jace, UAP Studies Podcast. Give him a follow. He's got a good following on YouTube. Fellow Canadian who's been researching UFOs and UAPs for a long time. One of the major things he always complains to me, I should have never, what is it? He's always like, I was the #1 UAP related podcast. I was the only one 2 years ago or something. And then, you know, you go on YouTube and stuff, and there's probably like 15 different channels called UAP something, but he was the original. So, hey, Jace, how's it going, man?
No, it's going pretty good. Darcy, longtime listener, first time caller.
Yeah, dude, listen to my voice, and thanks for calling in. I wanted to sort of recap some of the things from the hearings that we were at, because, you know, why not? Let's just kick a dead dog on the ground here, right? So here's some highlights. Michael Shellenberger, who's a journalist, a veteran journalist in the United States, he came forward and he presented to the congressional hearing, and this was put on congressional record officially, that there is a Immaculate Constellation unacknowledged special access program concerning data collection of UAPs. Now, this he alluded to is satellites and ground-based listening systems that probably are put in place for defense and intelligence purposes, but they tend to be handy UAP or UFO collection apparatus. So that was pretty interesting. He said the IC contains hundreds, if not thousands, of high-resolution images of UFOs that have yet to be released. He is the author of this report. He says that there is a person that leaked it to him, but he's not willing to divulge that information unless they're in a skiff. Skips were the most annoying thing for the UAP or UFO public. Sorry, guys. Classified information is classified information. People don't want to go to jail or risk their sources going to jail, yada, yada. He said that UAP craft were discs, triangles. Some appeared to be possibly organic, and some were orbs. Orbs and spheres we've heard of time and time again. Who else did we hear from? We heard from Tim Gallaudet, a friend of mine who I've met in person and interviewed for one of my docs. He talked about the Go Fast 2015 incident in which he saw the video before it was declassified and released to the public post 2017. And he said that he went in to interview at AARO, and his interview to take this position that Dr. Kosloski eventually got. He said instead of the interview being about the job, it was a 60-minute or so interview, basically banging like them trying to brainwash him that all UAP are just balloons, birds, prosaic objects, and possibly black projects. I'm okay with the black projects part, but the rest is like kind of dumb. We know that things like the Phoenix Lights are not balloons. So
you sure it's not swamp gas?
Oh, dude. Don't forget about swamp gas, of course. JL and Hynek's favorite.
Yeah, right.
We also have Lue Elizondo, who claimed that there was a multi-decade-long secrecy on UAP or UFO crash retrievals. There are multiple programs that were going on. He said that we have been re-engineering or, reverse engineering this technology, and we possibly have some craft that can do some of the capabilities that these crash craft are capable of. He said the Pentagon is hiding all this info from Congress, and he confirms that the Pentagon blocked the transfer of UAP material from Lockheed to Bigelow Aerospace. He said that UFOs are regularly intruding our airspace, buzzing our military locations or airspace, and interfering with nuclear assets. What else did he say?
Injuries to pilots and injuries to military personnel.
Yeah, that one on
15
record.
plus, he said.
Yep. True. Aaron Kessel, you're hearing there. He's the cat on Twitter. So for folks that are listening from KGRA, go give him a follow. He's a pretty brilliant guy when it comes to the UFO and UAP issues. And then last but not least, although I'm not quite sure where he fits in all this, Michael Gold, he testified and he said that NASA is the paradigm of UFO transparency. That was kind of shocking, considering we know that this has been going on for decades, and NASA has been front and foremost to the public, always debunking cases, especially objects that were picked up by their space cameras in deep space.
They cut their feet like
Yeah.
once every month.
Yeah, they cut their feed every time something anomalous shows up. It's they either obfuscate the video, add snow, cut the feed, change the camera direction. They know what's up, and there's some weird stuff going on up there in space, but they tend to not be disclosing anything. And he did say that there is a reporting mechanism and there is a collection system within NASA for collecting UAP or UFO data and material and objects that have been cited or whatever. He said that would be the perfect, NASA program or group to take part in really showcasing this. So I don't know. I think it was a really cool presentation. It was a really interesting time in history. Not everybody is completely enamored by it. People were upset about skips being mentioned and yada, yada, yada. But you know what? It was still pretty interesting to me. And I don't agree. I think it was an amazing time in history. Got to speak with some cool people there. Let's talk about that hearing. Anybody want to go for it? Aaron, Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot more than we've gotten since the 1966 and 1968 hearings. Like the 1966 was private, 1968 was public. But I mean, like, it was a lot more than we've got over the years. So, I mean, don't complain, right? That's the way I see it. And I mean, on the record, they literally just said that these objects have been harming humans. And I mean, that's a huge thing because that has not been acknowledged. And a lot of people are unaware, but back in 2022, before David Grush, the Sun had sued ATIP and the DIA back in 2017 after the New York Times article came out. And they received their FOIA request in 2022, and they released 15,000 documents that showed, or I'm sorry, 1,500 documents, not 15,000.
1,500, yeah.
Yeah, 1,500, not 15,000, but 1,500 documents. And in those documents, it showed that there was anomalous harm to humans, biological and physical. So, I mean, there's a recorded history of this, and the fact that that's been mentioned in a congressional hearing environment, it means we can go forward from here to more inquiry on things like that. So I think that's what people are missing here, that we've opened the door on many different really interesting concepts that have existed for decades in this community, in this sort of like hidden truth from the public. But now that it's been read into congressional record, senators, congressmen, congresswomen, they can go after this information. They can request skiffs for this type of information to be read into that environment with other potential whistleblowers and experiencers. And what if we have another congressional hearing where we actually hear from people that were injured or their health was affected? I think that's coming. Well, it's important. I think so too, but I want to highlight that there's been like 5 years since 2018, maybe it's 6 years now, of private hearings going on with the Gang of Eight and some members of Congress. So there's been private hearings happening while the public hearings are happening. The public hearings have only been happening for 3 years. The private hearings have been happening for at least 5 or 6. So there's a lot more that's been happening behind the scenes. And if you look at Jay Stratton's account on Twitter/X, you'll see the post that he had there with Lue Elizondo, and kind of a joint statement where they were saying that there was things happening behind the scenes. And then you also have Chris Mellon, who wrote for the debrief back in 2022,
just basically saying that he's aware of whistleblowers that are about to go public, and they were basically putting forth the legislation to protect them within Congress in December. And then it passed, and then after it passed, it took a few months, but then David Grush came forward within, I think it was June or July.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those guys are still getting like a shitload of pushback and getting threats. And so it's not really, it's not motivating for people to come out and come forward. And, you know, Matt Ford just released a thing that got put into the hearing today, where he basically was saying that the gatekeeper basically for AARO, which is like the official place for whistleblowers to be able to like speak their testimony, the main gatekeeper guy that basically would feed stuff to the CIA is the one on the advisory board that was placed there by Sean Kirkpatrick. So right now we still don't have a safe mechanism in place for whistleblowers. So I think we are making progress. I never had doubts that things were happening behind the scenes. I think lots has happened behind the scenes and in public since 2017. A lot of people don't have a reference point for this because they were, you know, fairly new to the topic, you know, only heard about it because of Tom DeLonge or whatever. But a lot has been moving. But the problem is like this stuff is, these guys are like legacy guys that know how to play the game, right? And so we need public pressure, and we need more to come out publicly so that we can keep putting pressure on these gatekeeper guys in Congress and let them know what to look for and who to go to. So I think we're making a lot of progress. It's just, and we're not going to get more whistleblowers until we create a safe means of doing so.
No, there's avenues. There's avenues that are available right now, like the Soul Foundation, but AARO, you can Google this and you can look this up. Sandcorp AARO contract. Sandcorp is a whistleblower, an anti-whistleblower organization that literally goes after whistleblowers. And AARO paid Sandcorp for services. The contract is there. It's public. You can look it up on Gov Spending. And I have it available if anybody can't find it. But post
it in the bubble, you know, the pill or whatever, so that people that are in this space can follow that.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely do that. But yeah, if anybody has information, go to Soul Foundation, go to Congress, go to News Nation. Those are your safe routes. Avoid AARO at all costs. AARO is overseen by SRG, SAPOC, and AARO Exec. AARO Exec board is basically the who's who of the gatekeepers, and like it's absolutely ridiculous that Congress created this organization. And the reason why this organization was created has to do with the swarmings that happened in 2019 in July. It was the Omaha incident, and then there's another one. Yeah. So those reports were actually leaked. It was the UAP task force's reports that were leaked by the Navy accidentally, right? They accidentally uploaded the files online, and the Sun reported on it. It was the only outlet that reported on these files when they got leaked. And the slides for the UAP task force were actually posted online and then deleted shortly after. So that's the reason why AARO was formed in the first place.
Right.
Because after those incidents, and then basically Congress in 2022 was grilling Ronald Moultrie and Scott Bray, right? And they were grilling them on this incident, and they were saying that they were drones. And then you had 100 plus different naval officials, and also Jay Stratton and Travis, what's his name? Travis Taylor? Yeah, Travis Taylor. Come out and say that their UFO bosses that their bosses in the Pentagon lied to them and lied to Congress, saying that those were drones when they said that they were anomalous and that they were triangles and orbs and everything else. So that's the whole kind of situation of what's been going on. And I think a lot of people aren't aware of kind of all the facts of how we got here, so to speak.
How pathetic was that AARO-led congressional hearing yesterday, November the 19th? I mean, look, people are talking about how it was only 2 senators that were there. Gillibrand was leading it. And then you had just one person giving testimony, and that's the new director of AARO, Dr. Jon T. Kosloski. And that guy had this like super nervous look. He had Susan Go over his like right shoulder, looking like, I don't know, some kind of possessed troll lady. And everybody knows she's kind of pulling the strings behind the scenes on the secrecy of this thing with regards to AARO. They debunked Go Fast, said it was a balloon. They debunked Aguadilla, the 2013 Aguadilla footage, which, let's just go back to that footage for a second. And maybe we can talk to NYUAP discussion about this. My friend Andy Marcial, he actually traveled with me to Puerto Rico. We met the whistleblower or the leaker who released the Aguadilla 2013 footage when he was working for CBP, Customs, Border, and Patrol. And all the information that we got from him proved to us, you know, it's going to be hard to prove to everybody out there, but it proved to us without a shadow of a doubt that was not a balloon. That object came from the ocean. It flew over the Rafael Hernandez International Airport on the west coast of Puerto Rico. It did a circle around. It went over a parking garage, over a neighborhood, over the beach, and back into the ocean. And let's add to that, just before it went completely like invisible in the ocean, it duplicated into 2. Very strange stuff. We had Dave Falch talking about that in one of our last spaces. He is a FLIR camera technician. He works for a company that repairs Westcam systems, which are the same guys that would have built that like $1 million system on the CBP plane that captured that object. And when you see a bird with that type of system, it's probably an MX-15. We don't know. But when you see an MX-15 through that lens in that FLIR technology, you see the complete shape of that bird. When you see a balloon flutters, it jostles. It doesn't make a like direct, straight trajectory flying down, up, and then, you know, splitting into 2. And yeah, everything about that footage seemed to point to being something anomalous. The other kicker to that was that no one on the ground, the pilot, and no one inside the plane could see that object with their naked eye. This is also a feature of UAPs or UFOs. They like to stay cloaked, so to speak. And it was picked up only in the FLIR footage. And it was the FLIR camera operator that followed this. Anything else I'm missing here, Andy?
Well, let's not forget the fact that the FedEx plane was grounded until the object cleared.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure, you know, if it was just a regular balloon, they wouldn't, you know, pull some stunt like that. I mean, and also, it is. I don't even want to entertain the fact that it was a fucking balloon. I mean, it's clear as day. There's absolutely no possible. First of all, it's been debunked a million times. It was called a balloon many times already. It was called a freaking pelican, for God's sake. And it's just ridiculous because this is how I look at it. These are people that are operating these, these devices, these cameras. We're entrusting them with this technology. We're entrusting them with these $1 million, devices or craft. And if they're telling you they're seeing something that they don't understand. You basically, and I always said it from when I got the videos that were released to me 2 years back. Then there's a bigger problem because we're not training our people properly, where they can't distinguish that. They can't distinguish, a balloon from something else. Like, it's just that's a bigger, to me, that's a bigger problem. We have a bigger situation on our hands when that can't be distinguished from our pilots that are being trained to operate these craft and use this technology.
So I think right off the bat, like within the first 2 minutes of the hearing, that Kosloski guy, he was like, I think that AARO, we're sticking to the same scientific method we were using before, and everything's just fine. It was just the old guy that people didn't like, but now everything's the same, but new face, everything's fine, but it's clear that they're not approaching some of these anomalous incidents with a truthful lens. They're still obfuscating. So I think the problem, like, I almost can't trust, like, show me the data, right? It's like what Gary Nolan says. You can't do the scientific method without showing the science. I just wanted to make it aware to Darcy, because I know he sometimes can't see hands, but UAP Studies Podcast has had their hand up for quite a while. So.
Oh yeah, go for it. And by the way, for the KGRA listeners, that deep cadence voice that was just speaking, that's ASAP Rocky, good friend. Go follow him on Twitter too. He's like a diamond in the rough. So go for it. Sorry about that. Somebody call the hands for me because I can't see it from my glitchy desktop Twitter.
Yeah, I was going to start after this.
I just thought you were mad at me. So
no,
super quiet.
Not at all. Not at all.
No, but you brought up some good points, not only about what took place in Congress, but to be honest and completely put all my cards on the table, I think we need to clean house ourselves within our own community, because I know the whistleblower situation is messy, but we are all fighting each other at the same time. Each one of us trying to discredit the other person's work. There's no unity, and we want unity amongst the whistleblowers, but we ourselves can't even unite under this same banner. And what's ridiculous is that it almost formed into a religion where we're adhering to these absolutes or these religious doctrines of old, from the people before us, the sort of old dinosaurs that came before us that laid the ground and foundation. But we need to clean up house. And Darcy and I both agree we got charlatans amongst our midst and people who make tons of money off of this and yet provide nothing, or at least have not provided anything in over a decade.
They're just fattening those pockets, that's for sure, with lots of money. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the problem that we're facing. It's something that I mention on the podcast all the time, and it's a stupid slogan, but I'm spreading it as much as possible. Teamwork to make the dream work. If we're not united, we're not going to get anywhere. If we're dealing with a civilization, just one, it would require all of us, all of our efforts together to uncover what a civilization is all about. We're dealing with multiple. You guys all know this. It's not one species. We're dealing with multiple visitors. And for us to fight even amongst ourselves, I think it's foolish. And I think we need unity more than ever and teamwork. And I think we see that enough amongst, let's call them the elites or the self-appointed elites in our class, that there's only ever 4 people that get interviewed on any news nations or CNN or whatever. It's always just 4 names, as if there's just 4 people in the world. They all happen to live in America, one in Australia, that are the experts. And I think that's ridiculous.
Hopefully that'll change pretty soon.
Yeah, actually, some exciting news for some of the listeners and followers here. My buddy Andy Marcial from NYUAP Discussion, he's actually going to be featured on a News Nation special coming up. It's going to be dedicated to the stuff that he revealed to the world not too long ago. And so this is the other thing people are missing. AARO comes out yesterday. They use that mockery of a congressional hearing to debunk the Agua Dia footage. Okay. But that footage came from CBP, which is a, part of the Department of Homeland Security umbrella. And DHS and CBP released their UAP reports at the end of 2023, in August, actually, of 2023. And in those papers that they released, you can go look them up, DHS, CBP, UAP published papers. They said that the Agua Dia footage, the A-10 Warthog, the La Bruja, the what's the other one? The Rubber Duck. That was authentic UAP footage because they have credible observers that work for their establishment, that go out on flights, that go out on boats every day, go out in trucks, that have these FLIR camera systems mounted to them. They're looking for suspicious activity. They're looking for cartels. They're looking for, human traffickers and illegals and all kinds of stuff, that is, they don't no bueno. They don't want that coming across the border and so on and so forth, or coming through the ocean onto their land. And when they observe these things, they put those videos into this what the fuck basket because they could not understand what that was. It didn't fit the paradigm of a conventional craft. It wasn't emitting a heat signature that would, fit something prosaic like a bird or a balloon. So what the hell is that? And then you got AARO coming in and saying, nah, it's just a balloon. It's like, did you not look at the studies that were released by CBP and DHS? Did you not look at SCU's work, the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies? I know that's civilian, but it's full of scientists, and Robert Powell did a very good analysis of the Agua Dia footage. I implore people to go read that.
Well, they only have Title 10. They only have Title 10 investigative ability, right? They can't go outside of basically their doors. They have very limited investigation capability. So that's their excuse. But it's all set up that way. And then you have, it's crazy because you have Title 10, you have AARO under Title 10, and then you have, at the same time, you have them being overseen by SRG, SAPOC, and AeroExec. So there's a two-way failure. It's crazy. So they can go and say, oh yeah, we don't know about these programs, but you don't have access to these programs to even find them.
Great.
Pastor Dale had his hand up, Darcy.
Yeah, I keep seeing him pop up requesting to speak. So yeah, go for it, Dale.
Thank you. I'm just having trouble. For some reason, I can't see who's speaking. And when it shows me speaking, it shows everybody. So a little technical issues. I found some things interesting that I'm sure many of you noticed, but the one that kind of stuck out to me was when Senator Gillibrand asked Kosloski how he was going to help people who hadn't trusted AARO in the past to be able to trust him. And I don't know if you guys caught this or not. The only answer he has is, well, this is why it was created. And I just what in the world? What kind of answer was that? And, the other thing that I noticed is in both of the House hearings, the witnesses had to, raise their hands and swear an oath. And in the 3 Senate hearings, I didn't see that happen for any of them. And so to me, that's very, very telling.
Yeah. What are the really there were so many moments like that. They were awkward. They didn't seem like a normal conversation or inquiry. At the previous congressional hearing on November 13th, they asked a question. Is there a reverse engineering program? Yes, there is. Question, answer. it seemed like Gillibrand was like leading this guy the whole time. It was like she would spend 4 minutes asking the question to make sure that he answered exactly the way that she wanted him to answer. And it's like, dude, take the training wheels off. This is a big boy. He's supposed to be the director of AARO now, right? Like, you don't have to lead the guy so much. And they brought up that there was the Langley Air Force Base swarm, right? The incursions over the airspace recently. The way that they glossed over that, it was just so weird.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, they mentioned it, and then when she mentioned that, he was like, yeah, well, it's incursions and events like that where we're going to make sure that drones and birds and other prosaic objects are not responsible. And it's like, okay, did you just allude to that being drones or balloons or birds or other prosaic things? How is that possible for days on end that could happen? And if they are drones that are not our own, what? Like, it just made no sense.
They also left out the Indiana swarming that happened a few weeks after the Langley incursion.
Yeah, the other thing that she did was she called them UAPs, and then Gillibrand turned right around and called them adversarial tech. And it's like, make up your mind, because you're basically saying they're drones, even though you're calling them UAPs.
Yeah. It was a total cluster F, you know what I mean? But
they were calling them UAVs.
And Darcy, I just want to point out you
and
what you mentioned,
UAS,
what you mentioned at the beginning
unmanned
was
aerial systems, I think it was.
Yeah.
Sorry if I might be glitching if I can't hear anybody, but yeah, I think we should keep an open mind that perhaps they know who's behind some of these things, and maybe some of these advanced tech are an adversarial technology, and they just don't want us to know that they've leapfrogged us in that way. That is also a possibility for some of it. I don't think it explains everything, but I think when they are talking in like very broad strokes, it's very possible that some of it is something like that.
It's very true.
It's almost like
it has to be something like that. But let's go to Andy. We kind of cut him off, and then we'll go back to you, Aaron.
no, it's cool. I was just gonna say that two things. You were right what you said about this dude. The look on him was there was something off. I got that the entire time he was talking was like almost like he was nervous, or I don't know. It just seemed like there was something really going on there where it gave off a vibe of like, I don't know. It's like something was just not right with the way he presented himself and the way he was speaking. And in regards to what Osop just said,
Yeah, totally.
I just can't say that. You just can't say that. I always laugh at the whole adversarial thing, or Russia or China. Unfortunately, that's just, you can't use that as an argument with this, because it's just, I mean, for God's sakes, it's been through us all through history. I mean, there's been accounts written in all different cultures about these things. So it's like, I just find it funny that keeps being brought up in this aspect, because how can you use that as...
I'm not saying it explains everything. That's the thing. I'm saying that, like, if we have reverse engineering programs and others have reverse engineering programs, it's possible that one of these countries has cracked it first.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, I agree there. Yeah.
And they did mention that I think in last week's congressional hearing, they said that there was an adversarial reverse engineering program. Like there was a overseas.
China's
There's multiple.
Yeah,
China has admitted it, and that's been out there for years now.
Yeah, and
but I was going to just real quickly say that it's almost like they pulled the national security card and said, "Look, this is a national security issue. We're going to kill this now," because that's all they can. That's all they have to do, right? All they have to do is just tell the senators, and just tell them and say this is a national security issue, and this is how we're going to script this, and that's it. Like,
Yeah. I mean, that is the trump card, like 9/11 event, but if somehow it happened related to UAPs, everything would be locked down. I don't even think this would be it wouldn't be a freedom of speech issue anymore. It would be a national security issue. But let's hear what Stephen, you're here. McKee.
Yeah, Mackie.
Mackie, what's going on, man? I met you at the Mario Nawfal space the other week, and you have some interesting things to say about this.
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate that. I think that a lot of what I have to say is less interesting than everybody else up here. But I was thinking just now about the national security, taking that away from what the senators are trying to look for, and I'd say good luck with that if that's what the intelligence and Navy is wanting to do at Air Force as well. The whole reason that we're hearing about this is because there's an intelligence program that has gotten away from congressional oversight. I don't really think that the Congressional Oversight Board is as interested in getting this information to the public as much as they're interested in getting control of it. So I think that if there's some compromise between, this program or these classified programs saying, okay, we'll come to heel. It will give you some oversight and you guys can be in the know, but let's keep it away from the public. I think that a lot of elected officials would be game for that. So that's one of my concerns that I have. But I also think that there's been a lot of concern that this is going to be an issue that, it looks like it's coming to light now, but it won't come to light later. I think as long as we're talking about it on X, and X is a free speech platform, I don't think that this is going to go away. The internet is such a powerful tool to combat some crazy secrecy like the UAP phenomenon. I don't understand how any intelligence organization in the world could combat, all these incredible interested folks and all the listeners. So those are kind of my general thoughts on where the direction of the conversation is going. I don't think that we should trust the congressional authorities that are trying to say that they're representing us in this moment. I don't really believe them, but also I think that the people have a lot more power than really anybody in the government thinks or that we ourselves think at this time.
Well, I'll say this, like the congressional hearing that happened last week on Wednesday, November 13th, that honestly gave me hope that the elected representatives were actually going to try and, quarterback this issue and bring it to the front and make sure that we all understand it a bit better. And maybe that there would be further legislation like a possible UAPDA passed that has meaningful literature, meaningful legislation there that could allow them to actually make meaningful inquiries into what's going on with this subject from the intelligence community and from the military community like the DoD. But yesterday's hearing did not give me hope. That I would not trust at all. I mean, that one reminds me.
It was a joke.
It reminds me that they want you to, they want the average citizen to be very ill-informed and very stupid. And, I feel like this community has a lot of bright people that are debunking BS, but then making serious inquiry into credible events and interesting things that have happened regarding the UAP or UFO history that's gone on for decades now. So whatever happened yesterday, that was just it was gross. It was not cool, in my opinion. But look, I hung out with Osvaldo, who is here tonight, the Disclosure Revolution with Osvaldo Franco. Nicest guy. I think you guys should follow his Twitter account. he's doing some pretty interesting stuff, and I want to know if I can work with him somehow on some of the things that he's been researching. But yeah, what else could we discuss regarding yesterday? I mean, it was no bueno.
I mean, if they were serious, they would start inquiring on the 1966 hearing and everything that happened there, and the briefing with the Robertson panel, which is still not public. Fred Durant's notes. Let's see what else. The 1986 incident with Japan Airlines that the CIA briefed inside of the CIA and inside the Pentagon, which led to the 1987 UFO working group being formed and hosted out of BDM International within a skiff. So, I mean, if they were serious, they would start actually inquiring into some of these past briefings that are still not public. If they were serious, they would, they would bring up the fact that in the 1990s, Senator Jeff Bingaman, was lied to by the Air Force and told that Project Moondust didn't exist. And then in the late 1990s, early 2000s, Project Moondust was declassified. And we had all these documents come out basically proving that they were doing recoveries of flying saucers. So, like, it's out there. The evidence is out there. The connection there to Battelle Memorial and EJ Center, it's out there. And Anthony Bragalia has done a lot of really good work on digging into the past history of this and Battelle's involvement, as well as naming the doctors that were involved. So, I mean, there's so much evidence out there. They can't hide this away forever.
Yeah. So you and I, we met on Mario Nawfal's space last week, Aaron, and we started talking really, we became fast friends talking about the UAP or UFO history. And you brought up just now the UFO working group. Now, the first time I read or heard about that was from Howard Blum's book, Out There. And this is like a very well-researched journalist who's written multiple books about all kinds of different things. He's not a UFO author. That was his one and only UFO related book. And he talked about in that the UFO working group. This is what you would call a legacy program. This is like not a term that a lot of people hear about. They hear about maybe MJ-12, right? Or Zodiac. Those are two legacy possible groups, right? But the UFO working group is a really interesting one. That was like circa 1980s. And Howard Blum was speaking to people that were part of that were literally like generals that were read into that group and were regularly meeting.
Yeah, Major General Albert Stubblebean was one of his sources. I was told directly by Stubblebean himself that he was one of the sources, and highlighted that there was a point within the book where there was an argument taking place between Stubblebean and U.S. Air Force General James Befauts. And it's funny how they got this by Dopser, but they got it by Dopser because it was just an argument. And it literally confessed within the book that Stubblebean and James Befauts created expanded the Moondust, or what Blum called within the book, the DIA-CIA Joint Air Force Flying Saucer Task Force.
Wow. Okay, so before you go into depth on that, I'm going to go to break. I got to play some outro music. I'm going off of KGRA radio, and we're just going to keep the space going. Sorry to cut you off, man, but I got to...
No, I unfortunately, I got to go for work, man. So
okay.
I have to go at 9. Might be able to come back after my work call, but
Yeah,
I got to take a client call.
we might be open. So thanks for jumping in, man. I'm going to roll the outro music here, but everybody hold tight, and we'll hear from more for you in about a minute.
200 years ago, 2,000 years ago. This isn't going to work.
She's picking up a massive object in this video.
Ships that might be cloaked, I can sense them in my vicinity. So I guess I'm just very tuned in.
Vulcan head honcho walks out. Ear reveal.
Yeah.
The crowd goes, "Oh my God!" Was to protect the secrets from the Air Force that were not out there in the public. So